The sun had long since disappeared from the horizon when Nima Ajayi plopped down on her snow-white sofa in the spacious living room. Her designer dress was pulled up above her knees, and her makeup was slightly smudged from a raucous party, one hand fixing her long pigtails, the other trying to adjust her smartphone on a tripod. The room, decorated in an Art Nouveau style with abstract paintings and minimalist furniture, served as the perfect backdrop for her live broadcasts. "Hello, everyone." Nima waved at the camera, her voice a little louder than usual. "Your favorite Nima is back on the line. Who didn't make it to the party at Elephant? You lost a lot. It was fiery." She laughed and reached for the glass of wine on the coffee table. The audience count was climbing rapidly. 100, 200, 500 people. The comments came one after another. "You look great, Nima. Where's your husband? What are you drinking?" "I'm a little tipsy today, folks," she winked at the camera. "And I'm ready to share an exclusive you won't hear on other live shows." Nima took a big sip of wine and started talking about the party, the people she ran into, the funny situations. Her subscribers loved these kinds of stories, juicy, with names and details that no one else was revealing. That's what they came to her channels for. At one point, the sound of a door opening was heard behind Nima's back. Daryl Ajayi, a tall man with short dreadlocks, wearing a strict suit, appeared on the viewers' screens. He looked tired after a day at work and was completely unaware of the camera on. "Daryl, baby," Nima turned to her husband. "Meet you guys. This is my dear hubby, just got back from work. Come on over here and show off to my fans." Daryl froze when he noticed the phone on the tripod. "You're broadcasting again?" There was annoyance in his voice. "We talked about this. I don't want to be on your show." "Don't be a bore." Nima beckoned him with her hand. "Come here, just for a minute." Reluctantly, Daryl walked over and sat on the edge of the couch, showing discomfort with his whole appearance. He tried to smile for the camera, but it was a strained smile. "Hello, everyone," he said dryly. "You know?" Nima chuckled suddenly, leaning closer to the camera as if she was about to reveal a great secret. "My husband is so serious in public, but you'd know what he's really like, especially in bed." Daryl's face changed instantly. He put his hand on his wife's shoulder warningly. "Nima, don't." But the alcohol and the attention of the onlookers had already done their job. Nima brushed his hand away and continued. "You think such a solid man should be a real giant everywhere, don't you?" She winked at the camera and then showed with her fingers a size that was clearly smaller than average. She wasn't. My Daryl is small but lanky. Although, to be honest, more small than lanky. Comments exploded with laughter and shocked emoji. The number of viewers skyrocketed. People shared the link to the broadcast, urging their friends not to miss the scandal. Daryl's face petrified. He stood up from the couch, his hands clenched into fists. "You're out of line," he said quietly, but with such fury that even Nima sobered for a moment. "This is the last straw." "Oh, come on," Nima tried to grab his arm. "I'm just kidding. Everyone knows that size doesn't matter." "Nothing matters to you except your damn subscribers." Daryl wrenched his arm away. "You just destroyed the last thing left of our marriage." He turned around and headed for the exit with a quick step. Nima tried to get up and follow him, but got tangled up in her own legs and flopped back onto the couch. "Daryl, don't be a baby!" she shouted, but was answered only by the loud slamming of the front door. Nima turned to the camera, a mixture of embarrassment and bravado on her face. "See what I put up with, guys? No sense of humor." She took another sip of wine. "It's okay. He'll cool down and come back." Where would he go? The live broadcast continued. Nima tried to pretend that nothing much had happened, but it was noticeable that the incident had thrown her off balance. She began reading comments aloud, answering questions from the audience, but her eyes often drifted to the door. 20 minutes later, her phone rang. Nima grabbed it with relief, but it wasn't Daryl. "Tisha!" she exclaimed, taking the video call and showing her friend to the audience. "Are you watching my broadcast?" The face of Tisha Okoye, a young woman with brightly colored hair and expressive makeup, appeared on the screen. "Of course I'm watching." Tisha's voice sounded concerned. "Nima, what did you do? That was cruel." "Oh, you mean Daryl?" Nima waved her hand. "He takes things too seriously." "You humiliated him in front of thousands of people," Tisha insisted. "I'd leave too if I were him." "So you're on his side?" Nima pouted her lips. Tisha sighed. "I don't choose sides, but you've gone overboard. Do you need help?" "What do you mean?" "You're drunk, you're upset, and your husband just left, slamming the door. Should I come over?" Nima thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, come over. I could use a friendly shoulder, and bring some more wine." "No wine," Tisha said firmly. "I'll be there in half an hour." Nima said goodbye to her friend and returned to the airwaves. She answered questions from the audience for about 15 more minutes, but the energy of the broadcast was clearly running out. "Okay, guys, I think that's enough for today," she said, fixing her makeup in front of the camera. "We'll see you tomorrow with more gossip. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel." She sent an air kiss and turned off the broadcast. As soon as the camera stopped recording, the smile disappeared from her face. Nima leaned back on the couch and covered her eyes with her hand. "Shit," she whispered. "What have I done?" Detective Cora Banks hated late-night calls. They always meant someone's life had just been ruined, and she had to deal with the aftermath. This night was no exception. Her phone rang at exactly 23 hours and 30 minutes. She was just finishing watching an old episode of Law and Order when the dispatcher informed her of a murder in one of Austin's upscale neighborhoods. The victim is female, 29 years old. The dispatcher's voice sounded professionally detached. Neighbors heard screaming, then called the police. Uniforms are already on the scene. Address? Cora was already pulling on her pants and looking for her car keys. Once she got the information, she jumped out of her apartment and raced to the crime scene. 20 minutes later, she was already parked outside a modern glass and concrete building. Police cars with blinkers, yellow tape, neighbors in bathrobes peering curiously out of doors and windows. A familiar sight Cora had seen hundreds of times before. She showed her badge to the officer guarding the perimeter and entered the house. In the spacious living room, lit by bright police lights, lay the body of a young black woman. Judging by the pool of blood around her head and the wounds on her neck, death had been caused by multiple stab wounds. There was a bloody kitchen knife lying nearby. "What do we got?" Cora asked the medical examiner who was already examining the body. "Nima Ajayi, 29 years old," the expert replied, not taking his eyes off the victim. "Preliminary cause of death is blood loss from multiple stab wounds to the neck and upper chest. Time of death is sometime between 21:30 and 22:30. Cora walked around the room, scrutinizing the crime scene. There were no signs of forced entry. There were 2 glasses on the coffee table, one with leftover wine, the other empty. On the couch lay the victim's smartphone. "Who found the body?" "A friend," one of the patrol officers answered. "Tisha Okoye. She came to visit the victim and found her dead," now giving a statement to Officer Jackson in the patrol car. Cora nodded and continued her inspection. On the floor near the couch, she noticed a tripod for a smartphone. Was she taking a video? The patrolman nodded. Yes, according to her friend, the victim was an influencer. She was always doing some kind of live feed. Check to see if it was broadcast today, and if so, save the footage, Cora instructed. She walked over to the victim's phone. The screen was unlocked. Cora put on her gloves and carefully scrolled through the last messages and calls. The last incoming call was from Tisha Okoye at about 21 o'clock. 15 minutes later, one of the technicians approached Cora with a tablet. "Detective, we found a recording of tonight's broadcast on her Facebook page. I think you should see it." Cora took the tablet and turned on the video. She watched as Nima Ajayi, clearly drunk, interacted with her viewers as her husband appeared, and as she publicly mocked him in the most humiliating way possible. The video ended with Nima saying goodbye to her subscribers about an hour and a half before the alleged time of the murder. We need to find the husband, Cora said, handing back the tablet. Judging by this video, he had a very serious motive. Already working on it, the technician replied. His name is Daryl Ajayi. His phone is disconnected, but we're tracking his credit cards and checking cameras in the area. Cora nodded and headed for the exit. She needed to talk to the victim's friend, the only witness who could shed light on the last hours of Nima Ajayi's life. Stepping out into the cool night air, Cora paused for a moment and took a deep breath. Another murder, another ruined life. And all because of what? Because of a few ill-considered words on live TV, spoken under the influence of alcohol and a desire to impress strangers. She approached the patrol car where a young woman with brightly colored hair was giving her statement. Tisha Okoye's eyes were red from tears, her hands shaking. Detective Cora Banks, Cora introduced herself. I need to ask you some questions about Nima Ajayi. Tisha nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I can't believe this has happened. The girl's voice shook. We were just talking. She was fine. Tell me what happened when you arrived, Cora directed her gently. I called her during the live broadcast, saw all the horror with Daryl, Tisha began, swallowing back tears. I offered to come support her. She said yes. I had to stop to pick up some medicine for my mother. When I reached Nima's house, the door was ajar. I called out to her, but no one answered. I went in and... Her voice broke. Keep going, Cora encouraged. She was lying there on the floor. There was blood everywhere. I screamed. Then I called 911. They said not to touch anything and to wait for the police. Did you notice anything unusual? Anyone walking away from the house? No, I didn't see anyone. The parking lot was almost empty. Daryl's car was missing. Cora made a note in her notebook. When was the last time you saw Daryl? In person? Probably about 3 days ago. I stopped by for a little while. How have they been getting along lately? Tisha looked away before answering. They've been having problems. Nima. She became obsessed with her social media. Daryl hated it. The constant arguments. The detective saw that Tisha was too shocked for a detailed interrogation. She wrote down the girl's contact information and let her go home with an officer who would make sure the witness got there safely. Now, sitting in the station, Cora studied every detail of the video again. On the computer screen, the young woman was laughing, gesticulating, and humiliating her husband in front of thousands of strangers without thinking of the consequences. The detective wrinkled her nose as Nima showed the very humiliating size with her fingers. The comments on the video were multiplying by the hour, from shocked to outright gloating. What an idiot, Cora muttered, stopping the video at a shot of Daryl's face contorted with rage and shame. There was a knock on the office door. A young officer poked his head through the doorway. Detective Banks, Daryl Ajayi has been brought in for questioning. Take him to room 1, Cora replied, closing the video. I'll be there in 5 minutes. The officer nodded and disappeared. Cora gathered her notes, finished her cooled coffee, and headed for the interrogation room. Through the looking glass, she watched Daryl Ajayi for a while. A tall man in a rumpled suit sat staring at the wall in front of him. His hands, folded on the desk, trembled slightly, but overall, he looked collected. Cora entered the room and sat down across from the suspect. Mr. Ajayi, I'm Detective Cora Banks. Thank you for agreeing to talk to me without an attorney. I have nothing to hide, Daryl replied. His voice sounded tired but firm. I didn't kill my wife. Tell me where you were last night between 21 and 23 o'clock. Daryl took a deep breath. After I left the house, I went to my friend Jamal Wilson's house. He lives 20 minutes away. I was furious, I won't deny it. What Nima did. He hesitated for a second, struggling with his emotions. It was the last straw in our relationship. Did you want revenge on her? Cora watched the man's reaction carefully. Of course I was angry. Daryl ran his hand over his face. Who wouldn't be? She made me look like a laughingstock in front of the entire internet. I get messages from strangers with insults and jokes. My co-workers have seen the video. My mother saw it. But kill her? No. I just wanted to get as far away from her as possible. So you went to a friend's house? Yeah, Jamal's. He's been my best friend since high school. I called him on the way over, and he offered to sleep over. We had a few drinks, talked. I stayed the night. Can you get Jamal's cell phone number? We'll need to confirm your story. Daryl dictated the number, which Cora wrote down in her notebook. Mr. Ajayi, you say you left home as soon as you left Nima's live broadcast, correct? Cora looked directly into Daryl's eyes. Yes, I didn't even start packing. I just grabbed my car keys and left. And you never came home again that night? No, I spent the whole night at Jamal's. Didn't get home until this morning when you had already called me. Cora paused, flipping through her notes. Were you and your wife having marital problems before this incident? Daryl grinned bitterly. There were, of course, Nima. She's changed in the last year. This obsession with social media, the constant live streaming, the flaunting of our private life. We fought about it almost every day. I asked her to respect my privacy, but her followers became more important than her husband. Did you ever threaten her? Used physical force? Never. Daryl shook his head. I'm not that kind of person. We fought, yes, but it was all verbal. Cora finished her interrogation after 40 minutes. Daryl Ajayi held himself steady, though it was obvious that the news of his wife's death had shaken him. He answered questions without hesitation. His story never changed, and nothing in his demeanor indicated a lie. But Cora knew that first impressions could be deceptive. After questioning Daryl, she immediately contacted Jamal Wilson. The tall, thin man with thick-rimmed glasses looked worried when he walked into the station 2 hours later. Detective Banks? He adjusted his glasses nervously. You wanted to see me about Daryl and Nima? Cora ushered him into her office and motioned for him to sit down. Mr. Wilson, I need to confirm Daryl Ajayi's whereabouts last night. Jamal nodded. Yes, he was at my place. Arrived in a complete state of annoyance around 9 o'clock last night. I saw that awful broadcast. A friend had texted me the link. I couldn't believe what Nima had done to him. And Daryl stayed with you all night? Yeah, we sat and talked. He was trying to figure out what to do next. He was going to file for divorce. He fell asleep on my couch around midnight, and in the morning, we found out what happened to Nima. It's a nightmare. Are you sure he didn't leave your apartment during the night? Jamal hesitated for a moment. Well, I can't say 100%. I slept in my room, and he stayed in the living room. Theoretically, he could have left and come back while I slept. But why would he do that? And how? His car was left in front of my house. Cora noted it in her notebook. The alibi wasn't 100%, but there was no clear evidence of Daryl's guilt yet. After talking to Jamal, Cora went back to interviewing Tisha Okoye, Nima's friend, and the first witness at the crime scene. Tisha looked exhausted. Her brightly colored hair was gathered in a careless bun, her eyes were swollen with tears, and her hands were constantly rubbing the edge of her blouse. Ms. Okoye, I want you to tell me again in detail what happened last night. Cora began, turning on the tape recorder. Tisha nodded, swallowed, and began to speak. I was watching Nima's live feed as usual. Saw what happened with Daryl and decided to call her. She looked upset, though she tried to hide it. I offered to come over and she said yes. What time was that? Around 9 p.m. I said I'd be there in half an hour, but I had to stop at the pharmacy to get some medicine for my mother. By the time I got to Nima's, it was almost 10:30. And what did you find? The door was ajar. Tisha's voice trembled. I called out to Nima, but she didn't answer. I went in and saw her on the living room floor. Blood was everywhere. I panicked, screamed, then called emergency services. They told me to stay where I was and not to touch anything. A few minutes later, the police arrived. Did you notice anything unusual about the house? Any signs of forced entry, clutter, signs of a struggle? Tisha shook her head. No, everything looked normal except for Nima and the blood. The knife was lying next to her. When was the last time you saw Daryl? In person? Probably a week ago. Nima and I were meeting him for lunch and he picked her up. What was their relationship like lately? Tisha sighed. Tense. Nima was obsessed with her online popularity. Daryl hated it. They fought a lot, but I never thought it would come to this. Cora kept asking questions, noting small details in Tisha's testimony. Something in her story seemed incomplete, but it was hard to pinpoint what it was yet. After Tisha's questioning, Cora returned to her computer and began examining Nima's social media more thoroughly. She looked at the comments under posts, paying attention to Nima's interactions with her followers and friends. Suddenly, a series of posts from a month ago caught her attention. A small altercation unfolded under a picture of Nima and Tisha posing in a nightclub. Tisha: "Great night. Thanks for getting me out of the house." Nima: "You're welcome, though next time try not to flirt with my husband so blatantly." Tisha: "It was just a friendly conversation, don't exaggerate." Nima: "Friendly conversation doesn't include knee-touching and playful glances. Just reminding boundaries, girlfriend." The comments quickly disappeared, but remained in the page's cache. Cora took a screenshot and added it to the case. Perhaps there was more tension between Nima and Tisha than the latter recognized. Toward evening, the technicians delivered an unexpected find to Cora, the footage from a CCTV camera installed on Ajayi's neighbor's house. "We have checked all the cameras in the neighborhood," the technician explained. "Most don't capture the victim's house, but this camera on the house across the street partially sees the front door." Cora turned on the recording. The clock read 22 hours and 15 minutes, about 15 minutes before Tisha's estimated time of arrival. The image was grainy, but clear enough to make out the figure of a man approaching Ajayi's house. His face was not visible, but his build and clothing matched Daryl's. "He lied," Cora muttered. "He'd come home." She watched the tape further. The man entered the house and stayed there for about 10 minutes. Then he came out and walked briskly out of the camera's line of sight. His face was still not visible, but his posture and gait were very reminiscent of Daryl Ajayi. 20 minutes after the man disappeared, a female figure, presumably Tisha Okoye, appeared in the frame. She entered the house and a few minutes later ran back out, clearly in a panic, pulling out her phone. Cora reviewed the footage several times and then instructed her to prepare a warrant for Daryl Ajayi's arrest. "We have motive, opportunity, and video showing that he returned to the crime scene contrary to his statement," she explained to the team. "Also, his friend's alibi is unconvincing. Jamal admitted Daryl could have left the apartment while he slept." An hour later, Cora and 2 officers arrived at Jamal Wilson's house, where Daryl was staying again. He opened the door, and a look of surprise on his face changed to understanding when he saw the police officers. "Daryl Ajayi, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Nima Ajayi," Cora announced, as the officers handcuffed the man. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, an attorney will be provided for you by the state. Do you understand your rights?" "Yes," Daryl answered, his voice sounding muffled. "But I didn't kill her. You're making a mistake. The security camera recorded you returning home about 15 minutes before the time of the alleged murder," Cora said. "You lied to us, Mr. Ajayi." Daryl's face showed genuine amazement. "What are you talking about? I didn't go home. I was here with Jamal." Jamal, standing in the doorway of his room, looked shocked. "There's been some kind of mistake, Detective," he said. "Daryl didn't go anywhere. We were together all night." "You'll tell that to the judge," Cora replied, nodding to the officers to escort the arrestee out. As Daryl was being put into the police car, he turned to Cora. "Detective, I swear I'm innocent. Someone's trying to frame me." Cora slammed the car door shut without answering. She'd heard statements like that hundreds of times in her career. Innocent, every last one of them, if you believed what they said. But the facts said otherwise. Motive, opportunity, lack of a solid alibi, and camera footage. Daryl Ajayi was the perfect suspect. On the way back to the station, Cora mentally reconstructed the evening's events. The humiliating live broadcast, Daryl's departure, his return minutes before Tisha's arrival, the murder in a fit of rage. It all made sense. And yet something bothered her, some detail that didn't fit. At the station, Daryl was taken to a holding cell. He looked depressed, but continued to insist on his innocence. "I didn't go home," he repeated. "Somebody's wrong, or someone wants you to think it was me." It was the second day of Daryl Ajayi's incarceration. Detective Cora Banks was reviewing the case file in her office when there was a persistent knock on the door. Without waiting for an answer, Jamal Wilson literally burst into the office, waving a small hard drive. "Detective, I have proof of Daryl's innocence." The eyes behind the thick glasses glittered frantically. "Calm down, Mr. Wilson." Cora pointed to the chair across from her desk. "What do you have?" Jamal sat down, breathing heavily, as if he'd run all the way to the station. "I didn't remember right away. I have a security camera in the living room at home. I'm paranoid about security. I have a lot of expensive computer equipment. The system records every movement." Cora looked at him carefully. "And what does that footage show? Daryl was at my house all night." Jamal put the disc on the table. "Here, take a look for yourself. It's from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. He never left." Cora took the disc and plugged it into the computer. The screen showed a picture of a living room with a corner sofa and a coffee table. The bottom corner displayed the time, 21 hours and 15 minutes. Daryl and Jamal were sitting on the couch with bottles of beer, talking animatedly. Cora fast-forwarded the tape. 22 hours. 22 hours and 15 minutes. Exactly the time the neighbor's camera had supposedly recorded Daryl coming home. But in Jamal's footage, Daryl was still in his apartment, now lying on the couch and staring at the ceiling while Jamal typed something on his laptop. "See?" Jamal pointed at the screen. He couldn't physically be at his house at that moment. Someone had made a mistake, or worse, tampered with the footage. Cora scrutinized the video. The timestamps, the continuity of the recording, the lack of signs of editing, everything pointed to authenticity. She quickly reviewed the remaining hours of footage. Daryl had indeed spent the entire night on Jamal's couch. "I'll check it out with the experts," she said, pulling out the disc. "In the meantime, don't spread it around." As soon as Jamal left, Cora called a technical expert and handed him the tape to analyze. Then she went back to the neighbor's surveillance tape, the key piece of evidence against Daryl. 2 hours later, the expert knocked on her door. "The tape is authentic," he reported. "No signs of editing. Daryl Ajayi was actually in Wilson's apartment at the time of the murder." "What about the neighbor's security footage?" "That's more interesting." The expert put the folder of printouts on the table. "I analyzed it more thoroughly. It's been tampered with. Someone digitally altered it, superimposing an image of someone who looks like Daryl. If you look closely, you can see inconsistencies in the lighting and shadows, plus compression marks around the figure-typical signs of an insert from another video." Cora felt her stomach clench. If the footage was doctored, the main evidence against Daryl was crumbling. Who could have done this? The expert shrugged. "Someone with basic video editing skills. Now there are plenty of programs that allow even beginners to do it." Another interesting thing is that we have footage of the same house a week before the murder, when Daryl was coming home at about the same time. Someone could have taken his figure from there and overlaid it on the new footage. Who had access to those tapes? "That's the problem," the expert sighed. "The neighbors use cloud storage for their security system. Theoretically, anyone with a password could have gotten access." Cora thanked the expert and wondered, if Daryl didn't kill his wife, who did? And who had tampered with the recording to frame him? She thought back to Tisha Okoye. Something about her testimony made Cora uneasy. She took out her phone and dialed Tisha's number. "Ms. Okoye, this is Detective Banks. I need to talk to you again. Can you come down to the station?" An hour later, Tisha was sitting across from Cora. She looked more focused than last time, but she was still nervous, constantly fixing her hair and pulling down the sleeves of her blouse. Did you have any news about the case? She asked. Had Daryl confessed? No, he insists he's innocent, Cora replied, watching Tisha's reaction carefully. And we have evidence to back up his alibi. It looks like he really didn't come home the night of the murder. Tisha visibly tensed. But, the camera caught him, didn't it? Cora leaned forward. I wonder what you know about that footage, Ms. Okoye. We didn't divulge that information. Tisha paled as she realized her mistake. Yeah, I just assumed. I mean, the neighbors have cameras. You shoot and edit your own videos, don't you? Cora asked, flipping through the notes. Your social media profile says you're a freelance digital marketer. You create content for small businesses. Yes, I shoot commercials, process photos. Tisha swallowed nervously. But what does that have to do with this? The camera footage was tampered with. Cora watched Tisha's face closely. Someone had superimposed an image of Daryl taken from an old tape. That takes some editing skills. Tisha's face showed panic, which she tried to hide. I don't know what you're getting at. I found an interesting correspondence between you and Nima. Cora took out a printout of social media comments. She accused you of flirting with her husband. Is that true? It was a misunderstanding. Tisha looked away. Daryl and I were just talking at the party, Nima exaggerated. How did you feel when Nima publicly humiliated Daryl on that live broadcast? Tisha clenched her fists. It was cruel and unacceptable. He didn't deserve it. You're defending him with great fervor, Cora observed. Were you in love with Daryl Ajayi? What? No, Tisha answered too quickly. He's my best friend's husband. Cora decided to change tactics. We checked your cell phone records from the night of the murder. You said you were delayed because you'd stopped at the pharmacy to pick up your mother's medication. But according to the geolocation data, you didn't visit any pharmacies along the way. Tisha opened her mouth but couldn't say anything. Furthermore, Cora continued, you arrived at Nima's house not at 10:30, as you claimed, but at 10:15. This is confirmed not only by the cameras, but also by the time of your call to the emergency services. I could have gotten the time wrong, Tisha muttered. I was shocked. Miss Okoye, we got a warrant to seize your phone and computer, Cora reported. The technical department is already working on them. Tisha's face contorted in horror. You have no right. We do, given the new circumstances of the case. Cora tapped her fingers on the table. You know what's interesting? They found a video editing program on your computer and traces of your work with Ajayi's neighbor's security camera footage. They also found a thumb drive in your purse with a backup copy of the cloud surveillance system. How did you get it? Tisha remained silent with her head down. And that's not all, Cora continued. There are dozens of pictures of Daryl on your phone. Not group shots from parties, but private photos of him taken in secret, and drafts of messages you never sent. Very explicit, I'd say romantic messages. Tisha's shoulders shook, but she remained silent. That's what I think happened, Cora said. You've been in love with Daryl for a long time. Watched how he was humiliated by Nima, how she didn't appreciate him. When you saw that live feed, it was the last straw. You went to Nima's place, ostensibly to support her, but you were actually furious. You killed her, and then faked the camera footage to frame Daryl and avoid suspicion. Tisha lifted her head. Tears streamed down her cheeks, smearing her mascara. He deserved better, she whispered. You don't understand how she treated him. Not just in public, but in private. Constantly humiliating him, cheating on him, and then making him a laughingstock in front of the world. Tisha's voice broke into a scream. I loved him for years. I would never do that to him. Tell me what happened that night, Cora said softly. Tisha took a deep breath, trying to calm herself down. I arrived as promised. Nima was drunk, laughing at Daryl's reaction. She said he didn't even have the balls to stand up for himself, that he'd come back with his tail between his legs. I tried to reason with her, but she just laughed and said that I probably wanted to sleep with him myself for being so protective. And then, Then she said that she had a video of their intimate life, and she was thinking of posting it to show the world that size really doesn't matter. Tisha clenched her fists. I couldn't take it. I grabbed a knife from the table where we were cutting fruit for the cocktail. Tears ran down her face again. I don't remember how many times I stabbed her. I woke up when she wasn't moving. There was blood all over my clothes. I changed into her clothes, took mine with me, and threw them away on the way home. Then I decided to go back and find the body, so as not to arouse suspicion. But first I made sure I had evidence against Daryl. You tampered with the camera footage. Tisha nodded. I had access to the system. Nima gave me the password when I looked after the house during their vacation. I found an old tape of Daryl coming home around the same time, cut out his figure and overlaid it on the new footage. It wasn't hard. Cora recorded Tisha's confession and called the officers to formally arrest her. As they read her rights, Tisha looked devastated, but at the same time strangely peaceful, as if a huge weight had been lifted off her shoulders. An hour later, Cora stood outside the cell where Daryl Ajayi was being held. "Mr. Ajayi, you're free to go," she said when the guard opened the door. "We've arrested the real killer." "Who?" Daryl asked, still not believing what was happening. "Tisha Okoye. She just confessed to everything." Daryl froze, stunned. "Tisha? But why?" "She was in love with you," Cora answered simply. "For years. When she saw Nima humiliate you on live TV, she couldn't stand it, and then she faked the tape to set you up." Daryl sank down on the bench, covering his face with his hands. "I didn't notice anything," he muttered. "I thought she was just a friend of Nima's. God, what a nightmare." "All your things will be returned," Cora said. "And I apologize for the mistaken arrest. We were just following the available evidence." Daryl nodded, still stunned by the news. What would happen to Tisha now? The court would decide. But given the confession and the obviously emotional nature of the crime, probably not the maximum sentence. Daryl stood up, squared his shoulders. "Can I go now?" Yeah, sure. We'll need to sign some papers on the way out." They walked down the hall in silence, each absorbed in his own thoughts. At the exit of the precinct, Daryl stopped and turned to Cora. "You know, the worst part is that I don't know who I feel more sorry for, Nima, Tisha, or myself. We're all victims in some way." "Victims of what?" Cora asked. "This obsession with social media, this constant need for strangers' approval, this lust for popularity at any cost." Daryl chuckled bitterly. "Nima had sold our privacy for likes. Tisha was living a fantasy instead of building a real relationship, and I just couldn't stop that train from derailing in time." Cora nodded. She'd seen too many stories like this in her career. Tragedies that started with seemingly innocuous things. A couple of likes, a few comments, a craving for attention that turned into an obsession. "Be careful, Mr. Ajayi," she said in parting. "You too are in the spotlight now. The story of your wife, her murder, your arrest and release are all over the net. Prepare yourself for the journalists to keep you busy." "I can handle it," Daryl said firmly. "I know the price of popularity now." He walked out of the station, paused for a moment, blinking against the bright sun, then strode resolutely away. Cora returned to her office and sat down to write her report. Nima and Tisha's story was another reminder of how thin the line was between reality and what people showed on social media. One careless live stream, a few rash words, and lives ruined forever. She remembered Daryl's words. They were all victims. Perhaps they were. But there were also those who had made choices. Nima had chosen to publicly humiliate her husband for the entertainment of her subscribers. Tisha had chosen murder over trying to help or just walk away. People always make choices, and those choices have to be accounted for.